Hey Prakash,
Hmm.
hi.
Hi, hi, hi. Yes, hi.
Welcome to Frontlines Media. So Prakash,
Yep,
before
thank you.
starting, can you quickly share your data engineering journey? What inspired you to
Right,
come to this field?
right. So, my journey with data engineering, so I have a total of around close to 6 years of industry experiences. And in my all last 6 years, I have kind of a blend of experiences, both working up in big MNC companies as well as core startup companies also. So
Mm.
I started my journey back when I graduated from ABS Engineering College. I am in the field of electronic and communication, and then I joined Pfizer. So Pfizer was a multinational company that is actually mainly focused on simplifying the banking domains for all the credit unions and the banks in the US. So I was a part of Pfizer for around 2+ years. Then I switched the company. I went up to into a product telecom startup called as Sacon GSG, where I was actually working with big clients like ATT, Verizon Wireless, Bell IP in Canada. So I was actually setting up their on-premise ETL environment and on-premise data warehouses houses so that they can actually analyze like how much telecom data they are incoming. Then I switched up that company and then I joined Teleperformance. So Teleperformance again is also like in my last 5 to 6 years, it's one of the biggest companies that I have worked. So with Teleperformance, I mainly worked up in different kind of domains. I worked up in telecom, I worked up in HR. After Teleperformance, I was a part of a very core startup company in US that was called as Wantive. So it was trying to bridge the gaps of loans and it was trying to solve the problems of loaning system in US. Upendra, am I still audible?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and then like I was mainly handling all of their DBT and data engineering and all the of their setup, and then I have another switch to another healthcare startup domain. So now I'm actually working with a lot of cool tech stacks like Snowflake, Azure Databricks, Databricks, and all those other things. So that's like on a very high level what I've been doing for last 5.5 years.
So Prakash, we have a 1 million community of audience. Most of the students nowadays
Yeah.
looking into data engineering, data science, AI, ML. So people who are looking towards their career into data engineering, what are the skills they require?
Right. So let me just take you back to my first company experience. So I was a part of Pfizer when initially, like for 1 month, I was working up in a project that was a core backend development project, and I came up from such a background wherein I didn't even know how to write select star from. So it was like very much difficult for me to understand like the Spring Boot, Javas, and backend frameworks. So I straight away went to the HR and I said I don't want to do this project. So at that time, another thing that was very much popular was something called as SQL. So I joined up a project in Pfizer when I saw the code bases, it was like very much readable to me. So that was like the very first pinch about how my data engineering journey begins. So any candidate who's trying to move up into data engineering or who's trying to pursue the data engineering, data science, data analytics, and all those other things, SQL is the bread and butter for that. SQL is the bread and butter for that student. I mean, you should always start from SQL and even if you are very much good in SQL, uh, just with SQL, big companies can also hire up you and give you lakhs of packages. So you don't need to worry. Just SQL is like the backbone. And there are SQL is being divided up into three types like basic, medium, and advanced. I mean, usually for data engineers and data scientists, it is very much recommended to go up to advanced SQL. But even guys who were trying to pursue data analytics career or a career as an analytics engineers and all those other things, I would highly suggest to go to advanced SQL.
Which database you worked in your early stage?
So I actually worked with simple SQL Server starting, and then like
Microsoft Word.
yeah, SQL Microsoft SQL Server I was starting. So I actually tried work and I worked up into very much core of that Microsoft SQL. I mean, optimizing the queries performances, the loads on the queries, the load on the system, the load on the clusters, and all of so those other things. Then post that I moved up to other databases like PostgreSQL. Plus, initially, in my very first project, I got a gamut of exposure of various different databases because they were trying to collect data from different data sources, Netezza, Oracle, DB2, and pulling all of data into their singular SQL system. So, got a bit of understanding on Netezza also, Oracle DB2, but SQL Server is like the base. You should start from there.
Okay. Currently, you are working with which database?
So currently, like in my current, I'm actually handling mostly on the cloud data warehouses, mostly working with Snowflakes and a bit of Databricks also. But yeah, I have also worked with PostgreSQL in my last company also, and previous to that company, I was actually working on DB2 also.
Okay. So how do you
Yeah.
recommend someone to build a roadmap to become a successful data engineer?
Right. So let me just start. So very first step starts from becoming an SQL expert, I would say, right? So once you are very much familiar with how to actually freely query up your hands in SQL, then the second step would be to move up to Python. And with Python, I don't suggest to go to all libraries, only with the data analytics libraries like the NumPy, Pandas, and Cplotlib libraries. These are like very much required.
Mm.
So if you get a good command on Pandas, if you get a good command on NumPy, how to do analytics, how to pull the data from CSV, how to actually clean the data, remove nulls, remove spaces, and then dump that data, plus also a bit of data analytics libraries, then that's good for you. I mean, that's very much good for you. Even in my Google interview, I was actually mainly asked questions around these things also. And then the third step would be I would recommend to solidly study an ETL tool. I mean, I in my all of my career have been mainly working with Microsoft tech stack. So my last company, I was working with mainly SSIS tech stack. So once you should get a very good hands either on SSIS, either on Informatica, either on DB2 and all those other things. But SSIS is something that I worked on preferably, so I would suggest that. And once you have a very good exposure, then the fourth step should be to master a cloud platform environment. I preferably go for AWS, but anyone can either opt for Azure or GCP. But with AWS, I think there are gamut of services in AWS also. So you don't need to study everything. You don't need to study EC2. You don't need to study anything, but you just can actually start by simple Redshift, S3, Redshift Spectrum, and all those other things. So once you have a very good command on cloud, then if you are targeting for very big companies like the Microsofts, Google, McKinsey, BCG, Bains of the world, then you need to get a good hands on system design also. So system design is like the last step. So once if you follow these five steps plus a good practice around lead code and the hacker rank codes, then I think you're very much good to crack any company.
So in this entire journey, what are the biggest challenges you faced while learning this or
Uh,
this?
Yeah. So most of the companies that I've previously worked on were actually working on the on-premise setups, right? So on-premise setup is something where cloud is not involved, and the big companies, the either startup companies, are actually moving direction from the on-premise into the cloud environments, right? So my thing was to mainly toggle from on-premise to cloud, right? Because I needed to get a very good exposure on cloud, and that is why was the main reason why I switched from a very big MNC into a very core startup companies, because the heavy cloud exposure I can get only from here only, right? Because those big companies are, because of the costing and all those other things, they're still very much sticking up to the old ways of using traditional ETL tool on-premise system. But what I basically prefer is, if you want to get a good hands, you need to be very good up in cloud. So this was like the biggest challenge. But if anyone who is just starting out, so I would suggest that, I mean, for initially 1 or 2 years, he should work up in a core startup company, get a gamut of exposure on big tools like Snowflake, Databricks, DBT. These are like the big tools. If you get a good hands-on, and then you can later on switch up to any MNC company and just basically chill on that part.
So coming to the projects, like what kind of projects you did? Any capstone projects you have done, or directly only working on real
Right.
projects?
Right. So I actually preferably mainly worked upon a system wherein I actually did up a big data course from Trendy Tech by Sumit sir. So Trendy Tech was a very good course. I mean, in that last course, I got a very good exposure on big data and also like on the AWS migration part. So in that project, since I sticked up to an ETL tool called as SSIS. So migration from SSIS to AWS Redshift was the project that I did. So any beginner who is trying to start, he can actually start from there, SSIS to Redshift. Plus there are also some very good courses on YouTube also for data analytics, like wherein you have to download and file from a Kaggle API, and then you can load that up into Pandas, and then from Pandas you can dump them, clean it up and post it up into SQL. So these are also like some of the good projects that I did later on. Plus, if you want to do any big data project also, I would highly recommend to go and first study all the data engineering setup, because big data is immense. I mean, when you talk Spark, PySpark, Python, and all those things, so you have to first get a very good theoretical knowledge on that part, and then you can post try it up. Because for that you need a very big infrastructure, and for that you need to join a good company.
True, true.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, like now, what are the industry trends currently exciting you? Like, because every day the tech is evolving so rapidly, right? Now, in engineering, what are the upcoming trends you are looking in?
So upcoming trends I'm looking is like mainly on the big data setup, because if you are targeting for a big company like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Netflix, these companies, I mean, without big data, without Apache Spark, without Hadoop, without HDFS, you can do nothing in these companies. I mean, you cannot even pass one round or two rounds. So industry trend is traditionally moving towards that setup, and plus also moving from a traditional ETL on-premise setup wherein you just extract the data from source, transform, and then load. It is the no companies are doing these days. They are mainly trying to either create profiles for analytics engineer, wherein they are mainly transforming it up after loading the data using DBT tools, or they are simply using the real-time data streaming pipelines. So for that, I think Apache Spark is one of the most important things that starting candidates should learn. And these are like more towards an industry trending focus, how it is moving.
Coming to the AI part, AI is everywhere. In data engineering,
Yeah.
how it is intersecting AI and data engineering and machine
So
learning.
let me tell you like a very good use case about my current company, right? So my current company, I mean, I have not yet announced on LinkedIn, but my current company is mainly working on solving the problems of hospitals, right? So the thing is that, like, I mean, there are different types of operating rooms that are hospitals are required, and that there are different types of surgeons. So based on the basically track record of the entire historical data sets, they are trying to calculate like how much is the hospital occupancy, how much is the hospital efficiency, how much ORs are actually available. So based on that, they can actually suggest the hospital to the patients and all those other things, right? So this is like the one of the most starting points where the data science and the AI and the ML actually start setting up. But for that, data engineering is very much required, because data engineers set up the base, and based on that base, the analytics engineers, the data analyst or the data scientist predicts what they are doing. So my current organization, we have like a different set of historical data, wherein we are trying to channelize all the data up into the Snowflake environments, and post on that, the data scientists are leveraging that up into their machine learning LLM models, the AI models, and this one. So this is like a separate field, but yeah, data engineering is very much required to go up into that field.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So for freshers, because out of our community,
Mhm.
most of the people are fresher community. So what advice
Yeah.
you give to someone starting their journey in data engineering, especially to people who
Mm.
are getting passed out in 2025 beyond?
But 2025 and beyond, if someone is passing and someone is specifically not from a computer science domain, I would highly suggest to start from the basics of SQL. Right. This is very much required. Once like SQL is in your hands, you can do a number of things. Right. And SQL, there are like certain things I would suggest to go for tutorial points, or either suggest go for Geeks, or there are like a lot of good courses in the market also. Trendy Tech is one of the companies like that is providing a lot of good courses on SQL. So Mixer is also providing a good courses on that part. Third thing is you can actually use up YouTube also. Ankit Bansal's YouTube playlist is also very much good for starting if you are starting from scratch of SQL. And then once you are like very much have a very good hands on SQL, you can straight away try to solve the medium level lead code problems on SQL. There are like 50-60 set of problems on lead code that you should solve. Once you are over that part, then I would suggest to go to for basic Python. Similar kind of setup should be applied up for Python as well. And then once Python is very much in your hands, SQL, Python, and then go for ETL tool. ETL tool is very much required. So ETL, any tooling language you can very much easily learn up, and then post that you can actually try to do a certification on AWS cloud, the basic certification. Once that is over, you can try to have a very good understanding of a basic analytics tool, either Power BI, Tableau, Looker, all those other things. Once this tech stack is very much up in your hands, you have like a n number of opportunities that are opened up to you. Once you get a good command on this n number of opportunities, then I would suggest to go up for the big data stuff, because I tried to make an error in my earlier stage wherein I was trying to study the big data stuff first and then going up to other parts. That didn't work for me. So I have to start from scratch again. So that's like what I suggest.
Okay. Now, how about the job
Yeah.
market, especially companies? What exactly qualities they are looking for a data engineer?
So qualities like for data engineers, like if you are targeting for a 3 to 5 lakh company, right? So that is like very much if you are very good with basic SQL. If you're going for a 10 to 15 lakh companies, you should have a blend of expertise on SQL, Python, ETL, and any cloud tool. Plus, if you're targeting for big fangam companies, you should go up for a system design part, right? Like, because big companies, they give you a package of 25, 30 lakhs for a starting data engineer. And I must say, like the data engineering role for a fresher in a big tech companies is almost similar to the SDE roles, the salary they get. So the interview process for them is also like similarly very much. So you should actually get a very good understanding on data structures and all those other things. So you should divide on what your target is. Like if you're targeting for a small company, then I think basic SQL is very much good for you. If you're targeting for a mid-tier company, wherein if you want to get a package of around 10 to 15 lakhs or 10 to 18 lakhs a starting package, you should go for SQL, Python, ETL, AWS, a big high level understanding on all those other things. Plus, if you're targeting for a company that will be initially giving you 40 to 45 lakhs or like 50 lakhs, 60 lakh packages, all those dreamy packages, then you should have a good understanding on data structures, system designs, and all those other things, because that's the like the bread and butter for them.
A lot of people working in different domains. Say, for example, I'm working on mainframes or I'm working something very legacy technology segment, and I'm looking for
Yeah.
the domain. So, what do you suggest them?
Yeah, so I was very much lucky because initially, like I spent up a lot. I wasted up a lot of time in like backend projects, and then I wasted up another lot of time in some testing projects also. That didn't work for me. So switching to data engineering, I actually set it up like a very basic ETL tool setup. I learned that tool, and then from that I was able to toggle up into a good project wherein a lot of ETL frameworks were actually being used up. So if a student or if a professional who is very much stuck up into his life and who is very much stuck up into technologies like mainframe and testing and all other things that are very much outdated, I would suggest to start from the very basic again: SQL, ETL, AWS, Python. So these four things, if you have, you can do it, and you can actually try to toggle it up inside the companies. Also, there are like a lot of in-job markets, also in-job posting or internal job postings also. So you can try to select up a very basic ETL project or like very basic ETL developer project. From there, you can start up and then leverage your experience up into other domains.
So, say I'm looking into data engineering roles. I'm a fresher or having at least 0 to 2 years of experience. Do you suggest them
Right.
go for a startup or MNC?
I would suggest to go for a startup, because in MNC, like things are very much traditional. So let me just very clearly explain you what's the basic difference between a startup and an MNC, right? Startup companies are something like in which you get a very big role for a very big product, right? So let's say in my last company, I was working with like around a 50, 60 startup employee company, right? So they had like around 8 products, out of which two of the separate products I was internally being accountable, internally being responsible for those two products. Anything related to these two products, if it gets stuck, I was very much called up into the calls, and I have to directly start dealing up with the clients. And by clients, I don't mean like my manager in US or all those other things. By clients, I mean all those banks, all those credit unions that I have to deal with them directly. So you get a very good accountability, you get a very good exposure. Yes, the work life messes up. You have to work for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. But initially in your career, when you are, let's say, like around 20, 22 years of age, right, graduating just from grad college or an undergrad college, you can actually start up with a startup company, spend 12, 13 hours there, and then post that when you have a very good gamut of experience on different kinds of things, you can straight away move it up to the big tech companies. And by big tech companies, I mean the big tech companies really. Second thing is the difference between a startup and an MNC company is like startups have a very small scale, right? They will try to cost save a lot. Right. So in my last organization also, like the RDS instances of AWS were very much costly. So they were trying to save up like $1,000 or $1,500 a month cost. So for that, like they tried to move their entire setup into another cloud data warehouse. So you get a good exposure on how to optimize the cost, because if you go on a very good level, if you go up, like let's say if you become a VP of Goldman Sachs, or like a technical architect at Google, or all those other things, you have to very much work on a cost scale also. So in a very small companies, you can get a very at an early stage, you can get up a very good exposure. Third thing, startup also doesn't have, like, I mean, a well established startup has those experiences like Uber, should say, or other things. But if you go up for the US based product startups, then they don't have like a big data setups much for them. So I would suggest, like if you want to get up a good setup, like you, then you should try to go up for good product based MNCs. Now talking to MNCs don't give anything. MNCs, you have to be a part of a very big you are a small part of a very big project. So you will be less accountable, you will be less exposed to a tech stack, and you will be continuously working on the same project like across like 4, 5, 6, 7 years legacy projects. And you will, at a certain point, you will experience a great quarter life crisis, and you will say like, this is not working for me." So 0 to 2 years experience, I would suggest go for a startup. Very core startups, 2 to 5 years experience, I would suggest go for a mid-tier startup. And post 5 years, when you are very much settled in your career, you have to look for a family life also. Then I would suggest go for a big MNC company, wherein you can actually sit back and relax and do the work.
Perfect. Most of the people will do in reverse because in my case,
Yeah,
also, I joined in TCS in the early stage. I
right.
worked for 3 years. Then I understood, okay, company per se it's good, culture per se it's good, everything is good. But the exposure is you are limited to certain team, maybe certain activities.
Yeah,
Immediately
yeah,
enter to a startup, you will see a different ecosystem.
yeah.
But
I
learning
mean,
of
in my initial company in Pfizer also, and when I worked in teleperformance also, I was very much stuck up on these things, because they have like a similar kind of architecture being followed up for rigorously for last 7, 8 years. And you just have to follow those simpler architecture. There is no scope of expansion or no scope of additional things that you can add up into this one. So this really can stuck up you and limit your thinking capabilities. I mean, in initial stages, it's not very much good for the candidates.
so you,
Yeah.
you might have come up with a lot of tools, right? What is the favorite tool you love to work with in your domain?
Yeah, so I come up with a lot of tools, right? So initially I started with SSIS, then I moved a bit up to Informatica also. Then I used up some of the analytics tools also. Yeah, but in my recent experiences, I would suggest that DBT tool, the data build tool, is one of the most favorite tools that I have worked upon, because it works oppositely to the ETL frameworks. It mainly work on extract, load, and transform part, wherein all the transformations. So just by using very basic SQL, you can do anything. You can just leverage Snowflake, you can leverage Databricks, you can leverage the Hadoop systems. You can do data transformation on all those things. So DBT is one of my most favorite tools. A lot of optimization is also being possible on DBT. Plus the gamut that DBT provides, it's also very good. So DBT is like by far my favorite tool as of now. And then coming to this, then the traditional ETL tools, I would go for SSIS and all those other things.
Okay. So, Prakhar, if people who are aiming for self-learning into data engineering, do you suggest any blogs, websites, or YouTube channels?
Yeah. So I would suggest to go highly for one channel in YouTube if you're starting for studying for interviews, because Ankit Bansal is one of the YouTube playlist. I mean, he was a former Amazon data engineer who left his job, started creating it up. Then I would, if you're specifically following LinkedIn, I would suggest Zach Wilson is one of my favorite creators. I mean, Zach Wilson is one of those guys who was a former data engineer at big tech companies like Facebook. Then he moved on to Netflix, and then from Netflix he moved on to Airbnb, and he writes really good contents on that part. Plus, second, Shashank Mishra is also one of the good YouTube creators for data engineering. You can follow his podcast as well. Right. Third thing, fourth thing is like from the blogs and website posts is you can go for Geeks for Geeks. You can go for either for the tutorial point. You can go for the W3 schools also, that will provide you a very basic knowledge. Plus, if you're trying for traditional AWS courses, I would highly suggest to go and give up a certification. Don't be very much stuck upon the online content that is provided. Go study for the certification, pass the certification, and then go up for a tool. Plus, if you're trying for a big data setup, I mean, it's a paid course. I actually paid like around 40,000 rupees for that course, but that was like very much worth. I would go for a big data course by Sumit Mittal. He's like that company name is Trendy Tech. I mean, he provides really good content on big data. So if anyone who want to toggle from data engineering into big data engineering, not directly into big data, I would suggest data engineering to big data engineering. He can go for Sumit Mittal's course. That's also like very much good.
Great, great.
Yeah,
So I think most of the questions we covered, Prakhar. Thank you
yeah.
so much. You
Thanks,
want
Upendra. And yeah, I would request your subscribers also, like, I mean, I'm writing some good content on LinkedIn also, right? So please do mention my LinkedIn and please do
to
follow my LinkedIn. And if any of your subscriber, I mean, I would suggest you, I would call you openly. If any of your subscriber is like left out or is he's feeling like he's not very motivated, he can straight away reach me out on my LinkedIn.
definitely.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you so much.